President's lawyer for this case, Joe Tacopina. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I first want to ask you about what you know at this moment about the arraignment, how it's going to go. Walk us through what is going to happen when the former president shows up in New York.
Well, Dana, I mean, in theory, it should be like the hundreds of other arraignments I've done in that building over the course of my career, which is you walk in, you see a judge, you plead not guilty, you set a schedule, and you leave. Obviously, this is different. This has never happened before. I've never had Secret Service involved in an arraignment before at 100 Center Street. So the answer to that question, Dan, is I honestly don't know how this is going to go. Hopefully as smoothly as possible, and then we begin the battle to right this wrong, because it's a day that, in my opinion, the rule of law in the United States has died.
We're going to get to that in a second, but just on the logistics, do you know what time it starts?
You know, nothing's been nailed down yet.
Okay.
I think that's going to happen tomorrow, but I think sometime in the afternoon.
Will there be a perp walk? You said you've done many of these before. Most of them do have perp walks.
Not really, not in a case like this. But, you know, look, I anticipate them trying to get every ounce of publicity out of this that they can get. You know, I don't know if that's going to happen. Again, Secret Service is involved. So hopefully this will be as painless and classy as possible for a situation like this, which I don't even know really what brings us here, but that's a different story.
Some of the basics are, as you said, you know, necessary as part of this process. Mugshot. Will he have to take a mugshot?
Again, Dana, you're asking me questions that this is not normal operating procedure. Yeah, it's all up in the air. All the Tuesday stuff is still very much up in the air, other than the fact that we will very loudly and proudly say not guilty.
Well, you're a very seasoned attorney, so presumably your strategy is not up in the air. So let's talk about what you're thinking about when it comes to the legal strategy once Donald Trump is arraigned. Are you going to move to dismiss the case right off the bat in the arraignment? And if so, on what grounds?
No, we're not doing anything at the arraignment, because that would be showmanship and nothing more, because we haven't even seen the indictment yet. You know, we will take the indictment, we will dissect it. The team will look at every potential issue that we will be able to challenge, and we will challenge. And of course, I very much anticipate a motion to dismiss coming, because there's no law that fits this. And you have a situation where, you know, the federal government, the Department of Justice, turned this matter down. The FEC, which governs federal election laws, said there's no violation here. Yet somehow a state prosecutor has taken a misdemeanor and tried cobbled together to make it a felony by alleging a violation of federal campaign violations, and the FEC said it doesn't exist.
Right. Let me ask you about that, because you mentioned it. You've been talking a lot about the FEC and federal investigations and allegations, investigations, I should say, that didn't end up in an indictment on the federal level. But we haven't seen the specifics, and we should say that over and over again. This is still under seal, this indictment. But because it is on a local level, on a state level, presumably this will be focused on those issues where he allegedly broke the law there, whether it becomes an issue of trying to defraud a business or something along those lines, not necessarily at the FEC and things that you're discussing.
No, it can't be. This was a federal presidential election. The allegation here, in some Twilight Zone sort of scenario, is that he settled the civil case 6 years earlier, something that happens, by the way, all the time. A civil case was settled with confidentiality agreements between a lawyer that was representing him and a lawyer representing the Stormy Daniels. Trump didn't even sign that settlement agreement, so they signed it. The lawyer financed it, subsequently gave him a host of invoices for legal services over the course of a year. They were recorded, but understand, here's the key distinction, Dana. They were recorded in their entries. They were never filed anywhere. They were never filed with the IRS. They never took a tax deduction, and they were never filed with the FEC because they weren't required to. This was a personal expenditure, not a campaign expenditure. Had it been a campaign expenditure, he would have used campaign funds, and then, of course, we'd be talking about here today the outrage that Donald Trump used campaign funds for personal expenditure.
Right.
They'd be baying for his scalp. It's a completely upside down world. So he's damned if he did and damned if he didn't. So those are misdemeanors, by the way, the record entries, which don't exist. They're not false entries, but assuming they were, they're misdemeanors way beyond the statute of limitations. So they had to cobble them together to try and get a felony.
I'm going to speak to Michael Cohen's attorney next. He says that there is actual evidence that your client, the former president, participated in falsifying business records. Have you seen any such evidence?
I know there's no such evidence. I mean, look, Michael Cohen's lawyer is spinning Michael Cohen's side. Michael Cohen is a pathological, convicted liar, perjurer. He's lied to banks, the IRS, Congress. Now he's saying he lied to the FEC when he sent that letter saying there was no campaign violation. I heard him on CNN the other day saying that when he pled guilty under oath, when he became a new man, he really wasn't guilty. He was forced to plead guilty. So that's perjury, if that's now true. He's someone who's constitutionally incapable of telling the same story the same way twice. So I'm not really worried about what Michael Cohen is saying on this. The records and the facts will speak for themselves.
Okay, I want to ask about the judge that we believe is going to preside over the arraignment. The former president, your client, was lashing out against him. His name is Juan Merchan. And the former president said that the judge hates him and was handpicked by the DA for this case for that reason. Are you going to ask for a different judge?
We are going to take the indictment, evaluate all our legal options, and pursue everyone most vigorously. This is a case of political persecution. Had he not been running for office right now, for the office of the presidency, which, by the way, the polls have shown since this has been announced, his numbers have gone up significantly. Had he not been running for presidency, he would not have been indicted.
Well, but
Had
let's
he been
talk
John
about
Smith,
the judge.
there's
Let's
no
talk about
scenario
the judge.
where he'd been indicted.
My question is about the
Sure.
judge. Will you
What about
ask?
the judge?
Will you ask for a different
What's the question?
judge?
Well, I just said we have to get the indictment, and then we'll evaluate every single legal maneuver. I have no issue with this judge whatsoever.
Well, your client does. He says
has
that
a very
he's
good reputation. Well, my client has a right to have an issue with everything. He's been politically persecuted. Make no mistake about that, Dana. Whether you sit on the right or the left, or you're a supporter or detractor of Donald Trump, this should really bother you. This should really shake the core of what we believe our justice system should be about. It should not be weaponized to go after political opponents.
So you don't
what's
believe
happened
this
here.
judge
So
is
he's lashing
biased?
out because he's the victim. I have no reason to believe this judge is biased. I've not been before him on this matter. So we have to let this process play out.
Okay. I appreciate it. Hopefully we will get back to you as you do learn more about how the process is going to go on Tuesday. Thank you so much.